Welcome in to Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. Outkick the Show presented by Oddshark. Go to Oddshark for all of your gambling and informational related needs. Let's dive right into the number one story of the day. The insanity that is LeBron versus Kyrie versus Stephen A. Smith. I'll also talk about this new result of the CTE study that has just come out and why I think it is such a massive story for the NFL and everybody who plays football. But let's begin with LeBron versus Kyrie versus Stephen A. Smith. Ultimately, what you have when you have a lot of different leaking going on is so many different people trying to get their side of the story out. Here is the different perspectives, all right? Before I tell you what I believe is happening, let me kind of break down everything associated with LeBron, Kyrie, and Stephen A. Smith. Okay, let's start with LeBron. I believe that LeBron James leaked the fact that Kyrie Irving wanted to be traded. I believe that that happened. Why do I believe that happened? Because Kyrie Irving went to the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers 2 weeks ago and didn't say anything since about his desire to be traded. Why, if Kyrie Irving wanted this news out there, would it not have become immediately public after his meeting with the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers? Kyrie Irving did not want this public. He tried to handle it privately. He went to the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He said, hey, I want to go. He handled it like a professional. He gave them 4 teams he would like to go to. He probably said, let's keep this quiet. See if you can find me a new destination. LeBron James finds out about this, and immediately he starts to think, wait a minute. If we leak this story, then a year from now when I leave the Cavaliers, we can blame Kyrie Irving for the decision of me leaving Cleveland. Because you know everybody's scheming in LeBron James's camp, right? How do you get out of Cleveland? How do you avoid this sinking ship without looking like you are jumping off and causing the ship to go under and upsetting everybody in Cleveland all over again? And they start thinking, you know what? Kyrie Irving just requested a trade. If we blame Kyrie Irving for taking the good ship Cavalier under, then nobody blames LeBron James when Kyrie Irving gets traded or our relationship is so broken. I can say I wanted to stay here in Cleveland, but fundamentally Kyrie Irving didn't want to be here. He didn't want to commit. I didn't believe it was possible to win another championship there. 100% that is what LeBron James is doing. Kyrie Irving is also being smart here. Everybody's ripping Kyrie for requesting a trade. Are you kidding me? Kyrie Irving has seen LeBron James bail on teams twice and toss a lit match over his shoulder as he leaves. The first time he left Cleveland and went to Miami, there was a total disregard for what he left behind in Cleveland. They were just starting to pick up the pieces of what LeBron James left behind with the Cavaliers when he came back. Look at what LeBron left in Miami for Dwayne Wade and for Chris Bosh. He left them nothing at all. LeBron James is the ultimate I'm out for myself player in a league full of players that only care about themselves. Kyrie Irving knows that LeBron James is leaving in a year. If he leaves, that Kyrie knows he's not going to get traded. He's going to be left behind with a bunch of crappy players that LeBron James got so they could win right now as opposed to win in the years ahead. Remember, Kyrie Irving is 25, LeBron James is 32. There's 7 years difference between them. Kyrie Irving is looking around and saying, wait a minute, are you telling me that for the next several years I'm going to have to win with J.R. Smith, I'm going to have to win with Kyle Korver, I'm going to have to win with Tristan Thompson, and I'm going to have to win with Iman Shumpert? And all those guys are drastically overpaid, not to mention Kevin Love? Kyrie Irving knows that if he stays, he doesn't get the opportunity to pick his team. He's stuck in Cleveland for years ahead with a poor roster of old, aging players that LeBron James put together to try to win a title. So, Kyrie Irving goes and does what a professional does. He goes privately to Dan Gilbert 2 weeks ago, and he says, I'd like a trade. Nothing goes public for 2 weeks. He gives him 4 teams that he'd be happy to be traded to, and then suddenly this news goes public, and who breaks it? All of LeBron James's stooges. The Brian Windhorse of the world who sit around coddling LeBron James's balls all day long. Just palpating him, just blowing on him, just saying, hey, LeBron, what can we do to make your balls feel better? All the same guys who came out and said LeBron James was so brave when he made up that story about the racial slur on the house, outside the gate outside his house in Brentwood. It's now been almost 2 months. Do you know there still isn't a single shred of evidence that LeBron James was the victim of a racial slur? 2 months. He compared himself to Emmett Till. Think about that for a minute. Nobody but me called him on it. I was almost the only person in the media who even asked the question, who even reached out to the LAPD and said, wait a minute, how come you don't have any evidence of this racial slur? When everybody else was comparing LeBron James to Martin Luther King, I had the gall, the temerity, the absolute willingness to ask a question. Why is there no evidence about this? Why 2 weeks later, 2 months later, do we still have no evidence that LeBron James's house was a victim of graffiti? So, he wanted this story out, LeBron James did. Kyrie Irving is trying to look out for himself, and LeBron James isn't used to any of his teammates looking out for himself. He expects them to be there, for all these players to be his bitch. All right? Second part of this. Stephen A. has tons of contacts all over the NBA. Said on his show this morning, I went and listened to it when he came on, that LeBron hasn't liked him since 2011 when LeBron believed he was too critical of his performance in the finals against the Dallas Mavericks. So Stephen A. isn't talking directly to LeBron, but he's talking to everybody around LeBron. And Stephen A. comes out and says something that LeBron James doesn't like. He says that LeBron James is so upset with Kyrie Irving that he would potentially kick his ass if they saw each other in person. That's a pretty big deal. People might want to argue otherwise, but in my time in sports, I can't remember anybody ever saying about a teammate, I would kick his ass maybe if I saw him in public. Ever. It's rare that even people who hate each other say publicly that they would kick each other's ass if they saw each other in public. Think about that. It's a huge story. Massive story. Kyrie Irving, LeBron James. LeBron James comes out and calls Stephen A. Smith a liar. Let me ask you this. Why would Stephen A. Smith lie? What does he have to gain at all by making up this story? I'm not saying that Stephen A. Smith is a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter, but what out there does he have a reason to make this up? Why does Stephen A. Smith have a reason to make up this story? He doesn't have one. He's a multimillionaire. He has his own show. He has his own radio show. He doesn't need more attention. He's got enough attention. He's not even on First Take this week. He's not even hosting his own show. If he were, that would make a little bit more sense. But if he were going to make up a story, don't you think he would at least wait till he's actually on ESPN Daily? Stephen A. Smith put out a story that LeBron James doesn't like. By the way, find me a story that ESPN has written about LeBron James that LeBron doesn't like in the last several years. They employ this guy Windhorst who just follows LeBron James around everywhere he goes and just juggles his balls. Everybody that ESPN has that is a reporter is all over LeBron James's nutsack. Whatever LeBron gets, he wants. That's the truth from ESPN. And so as a result, LeBron reacts with anger over this story coming out. And when I look at all the tea leaves, I can't find anything other than I believe it to be true. I think that LeBron leaked the Kyrie Irving news because it made him look better. I think that makes it easier for him to leave Cleveland. I think that Kyrie Irving was upset about that news getting leaked. I think if Kyrie Irving had wanted it leaked, it would have happened soon after he initially met with the Cavs, not 2 weeks later. I think that in this way that this entire story has been played and spun, LeBron James is playing everybody as a bitch, right? He's trying to do what Donald Trump does, which is say that the news is fake, even when he knows that the news is real. So those are my thoughts when you look at the overall Kyrie Irving versus LeBron James versus Stephen A. Smith story. That's my analysis. That makes sense by far to me from a narrative perspective, how we got to this moment. Questions from you guys about why you believe or don't believe what I just told you. What questions do you have about the LeBron versus Kyrie versus Stephen A. Smith drama? If you want a little bit of news in the background here, let me tell you this. A little bit of news in the background. This is how news stories work. All right? This is how news stories work on average. People go out there and they have lots of off-the-record conversations. Okay? Stephen A. Smith goes out. He has a lot of off-the-record conversations, and then he gets something on the record, LeBron James threatening to beat Kyrie Irving's ass, and he gets it, and he puts it out there publicly, and I remember a great line from Jay Glazer back in the day, where Jay Glazer said he only reported 5% of what he knew. Ultimately, you're in the information business when you are Stephen A., when you are in this kind of arena. Probably the single NBA authority with the biggest megaphone in all of sports. So that's what I believe. That's what I believe happened. That's why I believe it's a big story. Any questions about that? I don't believe Stephen A. Smith. I think LeBron James has a reason to not want this story out there. I think Stephen A. Smith is being 100% true in the way that this is covered. Where Kyrie will go, I have no idea. But I think it makes perfect sense. If I were representing Kyrie Irving, I would say, look, you saw LeBron leave Cleveland once before. You just saw him leave Miami. Why would you not believe that he will do the same thing to you? Why would you not believe that he will leave you just like he left the other two teams before? Lots of different questions. Yeah, Jason Martin had a bad argument this morning. If you want to argue that you don't believe Stephen A. Smith, that's certainly make the argument, I don't believe what Stephen A. Smith is saying, right? You can say I don't trust his reporting. You can say I don't believe that he's accurate. All of those things. But I believe Stephen A. Smith here because I don't think he has anything to gain. I believe people lie when they have something to gain. What does Stephen A. Smith have to gain here? What asset does he not have? He's got a huge show. He's got his own radio show. He's got millions of people who read and pay attention to him on a day-to-day basis. Why would he make this up? It doesn't make sense that he would make it up. Certainly somebody told him that that is what LeBron James said, and he believes that source to be accurate. I bet what happened is LeBron James immediately went on the warpath as soon as this story went out and said, my God, who in my inner circle told this story to Stephen A. Smith? I think that's fair. If you have a crew that surrounds you and you are talking privately about how upset you are at Kyrie Irving, it's fair for LeBron to be upset if one of his crew talks and the story gets out there. Just like Donald Trump is always upset about leaks, effectively, that's what happened to LeBron James. A leak that he didn't want to get out, got out. Someone in his crew, someone in his posse, someone in his circle conveyed that story about how upset LeBron James was to Stephen A. Smith, and now LeBron James is probably upset because it played poorly on his angle. Jordan punched teammates. That happens all the time. People fight internally. I'm asking you guys right now, can you ever name me a teammate saying he wanted to beat the ass of another teammate and it going public in the news? If you've ever played sports, you have been on a team where somebody wanted to beat somebody else's ass and said it at practice. It starts at a young age. Have you ever seen a story go public? That's different. People always like, Michael Jordan punched Steve Kerr. That's in practice. People fight all the time in practice. We used to do stories all the time out at the Tennessee Titans practice. Do you know how often people fight on the football field? Full punches, full brawls in practice? That happens all the time. Every sport that you play, basketball, hockey, baseball, football, everything. People fight in practice. I'm talking about a pro athlete coming out publicly and saying in some way through one of his boys, I want to beat that guy's ass. It's never happened that I remember. Think about how big of a story this would be in another sport. Think about if Dak Prescott had said about Tony Romo when Romo was trying to decide whether or not he was going to come back. Dak Prescott told his buddies, I want to beat Tony Romo's ass because I'm so sick of hearing about him. Major story. Think about if Aaron Rodgers had said about Brett Favre when Brett Favre kept going back and forth about whether or not he was going to end up being retired or not. Think about if Aaron Rodgers had come out and said, you know what? I want to beat Brett Favre's ass. I'm tired of his bitch ass talking about whether or not he is going to play or not. No brainer. Would have been a huge story beyond doubt. Zero doubt. Doesn't ever happen. I can't even remember two teammates with one of them going public talking about how they wanted to beat the ass out of the other one. Now, again, you have squabbles in practice all the time. Guys get in fight at training camps, 110 degrees outside, somebody's angry. That happens all the time. Well, I'm talking about going into the locker room and saying to a media member, and not just any media member, one of the most prominent media members who covers your sport, having one of your crew say that you've been saying you want to beat Kyrie Irving's ass. I'm telling you right now, that's unheard of. That's a massive story. That's an unbelievable story. All right, I want to talk a little bit about this CTE story. I told you guys a while back to read League of Denial. And by the way, before we can go any further, SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab, click add a promo code, put in the promo code OUTKICK. It's the word that's on the board right here, right now. Again, go download SeatGeek, click add a promo code, go to the settings tab, put in the promo code OUTKICK. You're getting ready for football season, whether it's the NFL, whether it's college football, whether it's maybe Mayweather-McGregor, whatever event you want to go to, my guys at SeatGeek will get you hooked up. I was looking at the WWE tickets. We had second row tickets. They'll hook you up anywhere. They'll tell you what the value of your seat's going to be. You know what I was looking up recently? I didn't know what the stadium setup's going to be like at new Mercedes-Benz Arena. I'm going to Bama FSU and I'm going to Tennessee Georgia Tech. And I was like, I wonder what tickets are going for down there. I'm going to be in the press box. I don't have to pay for a ticket, but I might be bringing people with me. And I was like, I wonder what these are going to cost and also what the quality of the seat's going to look like. What's the setup of the stadium going to be? Go download the SeatGeek app. You can go in, click add a promo code in the settings tab. You put in the promo code OUTKICK. You get $20 off your first purchase. Best way to start college football or the NFL seasons by saving money with my friends at SeatGeek. Okay. Did you see this massive story about 110 out of 111 people who've had their brains given over to society to be studied having CTE? I think this is a massive story for the NFL. I told you all to read League of Denial. It's one of the most fascinating sports books I've ever read. It's about they made the movie Concussion about it. It's about the discovery of CTE. I always like to go back in time a little bit. How many of you out there right now, I don't know, a lot of you might not have kids because you're young. But if you had kids, there's almost no dad or mom out there today who will allow their son to box. Right? Muhammad Ali and everything that happens when your brain gets hit again and again and again killed the idea of there ever being boxing. You want to know why Floyd Mayweather is one of the last great boxers? It's because nobody lets their kids box anymore. Used to be in the 50s and 60s, everybody boxed. You ended up with great fighters. Nowadays, you don't get them. Nowadays, you don't get them at all. So, as a result, the quality of boxing has gone down because the athletes that would have otherwise ended up being boxers went into other sports. I want you to think about this with me for a minute. What is the athletic background and educational background and socioeconomic background, on average, of quarterbacks in the NFL? It's just fascinating. Almost every quarterback in the NFL comes from a two-parent household and would have gone to college even if they weren't good at football. Look at them. Look at all the quarterbacks, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, Cam Newton, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Tony Romo back in the day, the Manning brothers, almost all of them would have gone to college even if they didn't play football, right? And even if Mariota, like you name it, name me a guy who doesn't have a two-parent household right now who's a starting quarterback in the NFL. Quarterback is a high-end socioeconomic profession. You have to be smart, and you also have to be able to afford, overall, a lot of money to be spent. Dak Prescott might be the only one that you can name right now who's a starter in the NFL that didn't come from a two-parent household. Might be it. Think about it. Can anybody else name another one right now in the comments on either Facebook or Periscope? Can you name another quarterback, even a guy like Colin Kaepernick, adopted parents, current starting quarterback in the NFL? Why does that matter? I haven't heard anybody else saying this. But if you look at the quarterbacks in the NFL right now, I think 31 out of 32 of them come from two-parent households, stable. Right? They would have gone to college even if they weren't quarterbacks. All right? Which are the first guys that are going to stop playing football over CTE? It's going to be the middle-class, higher-end football players. Why do I think that matters? I'm going to talk about this tomorrow on the show more. What would the NFL product look like this coming year if you took the top 14 quarterbacks and eliminated them from the NFL? The product would be complete shit, right? The product would be total trash. Think about it. If you took the top 12 or 14 quarterbacks out of the NFL right now, it would be awful to watch. Almost all of those guys are guys who will have other options in sports. Their moms or their dads will say, hey, instead of picking up that football, why don't you play soccer? Why don't you play baseball? Why don't you play lacrosse? Why don't you play whatever, basketball, whatever other sport you want to play? Because you will not have the ability to have consistent pocket passing quarterbacks who could have otherwise played other sports. The first guys to stop playing NFL are going to be the most educated, double parent, college educated families. They're going to say, wait a minute, why do I want my kid to risk everything to play football? A guy like Russell Wilson is going to play baseball. He's not ever going to play football at all. Think about all those guys. They're all going to stop to play football. And as a result, the overall quality of the league is going to decline. Now, it's going to decline at other positions too, because you'll have fewer cornerbacks to pick from. You'll have fewer linebackers. You'll have fewer offensive linemen. They'll all move into other sports. And so the overall quality of play will diminish. But the primary place where you're going to end up with a diminishment is at a skill position like quarterback. I think this is a massive issue going forward for the NFL. The number of kids who play football is going to continue to decline. And ultimately, the quality of play in the NFL is a function of how many people play, right? Because let's say there's 1 million kids playing football this year, 8th grade and above. And that may be a wrong number, but let's just say there's 1 million. If suddenly the number drops to 600,000, that's just a lot less players to be able to find quality, talented NFL players from. Finding good talent in anything is a function of probability, right? The number of guys who can be great at quarterback is like the number of guys who can be great at being a lawyer or a doctor or anything else. It's a small number in the grand scheme of things. The best way to increase the overall talent level is to increase the number of people who play, right? That's why, for instance, even though we're so much better in every other sport, we're not the best necessarily in soccer. Because Brazil, every boy in Brazil is playing soccer. It is, by the way, why our women's soccer team is so much better than everybody else. In Saudi Arabia, they can't even wear skirts. We're going to kick the fuck out of Saudi Arabia in soccer, right? Because our girls have full rights. They can drive cars. They can wear skirts. They can score goals. Our girls are competing against a small fraction of the overall girls in the rest of the world. Whereas the men are competing in theory against every man on earth. It's a fascinating question. And so as a result, I believe that the NFL is a house of cards. I think it's going to come tumbling down. They're going to have to change the way the game is played. And there are going to be a lot of moms out there, primarily moms, who say, I'm not willing to put my baby out on the football field and let him play because there's too much danger associated with it. Now, you can say that everybody else out there is now making a decision to assume the risk, but I think it's going to be like what happened with boxing with Muhammad Ali. you're going to have more and more guys of prominent natures that everybody recognizes, and they're going to start to slip up. I'll give you one example in Nashville. I like him. He's a great guy. Frank Wycheck. Frank Wycheck is a shadow of himself compared to what he was when he was young and healthy. He's already said he's going to donate his brain to the CTE study. Really good dude. Great guy. I work with another one, Blaine Bishop. Great guys. But Frank in particular, when he's on the air, you can hear the way that he talks. His brain is not functioning as well as it should. And that's because of all the hits he took over the years playing the game. And people can say, oh, you can change the way the game's played and everything else. I think ultimately football is such a dangerous game, it's impossible to play safely. It really is. And so if I were sitting around right now, my kids are not going to be very big, right? I've got a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old. My wife is small. She's hot, but she's small. I'm 6 foot 180. I'm not very fast. My boys are not going to be great athletes. No way I'm letting them play football. They're just not going to be big and strong enough, and I'll let them play other sports. If I had a choice right now and I'm sitting around and I'm like, I think my son could be good at football or he could be good at basketball. I think my son could be good at football or I think he could be good at baseball. I'm going to encourage him. Now, when he gets to be old enough, he can decide whatever he wants to do, right? At 18 years old, he has that right. But I would encourage him. I would say, hey, try to play the sport you can play for 20 years where you're not going to get that hurt. That would be my advice. Now, there's always going to be kids coming up who have nothing, right? And that makes sense, that if you have nothing and you believe that you can be good at playing whatever position it is in football, you can assume that risk. You can say, you know what? I think football is so great and so much fun that it's worth living 8 less years, right? I mean, there's some guys who can say that. Now, there's some positions, too, where you don't have to take as many hits. If you're a great athletic cornerback, let's say, or a punter, you're taking less hits. Honestly, quarterbacks nowadays are taking a lot less hits. That's why they can play for so long. But I think you're going to have to think very significantly as you move forward. Dads and moms, grandmas, everybody's going to have to sit around the table and say, is football worth the risk? And I think it's going to be very similar to the conversations that people had about boxing. And it's not that people are going to stop playing sports. It's that they're going to move into other sports, and those sports are going to benefit. Instead of all the people playing football, maybe there's more in soccer. Maybe there's more in golf. Maybe there's more in tennis. Maybe there's more in baseball, lacrosse, whatever it is. Kids are going to gravitate towards other sports because their parents aren't going to put them in. Now, if I were trying to design a football system that made sense, I would say let's play 7-on-7, flag football. I play flag football. I'd like the kids play flag football until you're like 14 or 15 years old. I don't know what the benefit is of playing tackle football. That's my personal idea. So if I were advising the NFL, I would say let's try to get 7-on-7. Let's get skilled athletes out there on the field where they're running around. Let's make it flag football. And by the time you get to be high school age, that's where you can go out and start to play tackle football. That would be my advice. There's no benefit to a 9-year-old playing tackle football in my mind. But I would encourage you guys, if you are sports fans, you need to go read League of Denial. It's the most important sports book to be written in our lifetimes, and it's eye-opening. You need to do something more than just watch the movie Concussion. What about fat kids? Fat kids got to play sports too. Get out on the field and run. Play soccer. Fat kids can play soccer. Fat kids can play baseball. They can hit the ball a long way. Fat kids can play golf. Ask John Daly. Fat kids can do a lot of things that make them less fat as they get older. That would be my thoughts. Questions that everybody has. Stop with the 9-year-old will learn how to tackle. You can't play football safely. That's what you learn if you read League of Denial. See, people are focused on concussions. What you learn about with CTE is coming not from the big hits. It's not coming from concussions. It's coming from the repetitive daily blows that happen again and again and again on every single possession. A lot of people have the misconception that CTE is the result of concussions, the big massive hits that knock guys out of games. When you read the book, again, League of Denial, what you learn is that it's not the game of football's big hits. It's the repetitive blows over and over and over again on a day-to-day basis. People say soccer's not safe. It's infinitely safer. But if I were designing soccer for the future, I wouldn't allow heading. I wouldn't allow people to head the soccer ball in soccer until you get to be like 15 or 16 years old. And you can learn the proper technique to hit. Because I think a lot of people who play soccer, I played soccer. I know every now and then you hit the ball the wrong way. Most people shouldn't be heading the ball in soccer. Use your chest, use your legs, use your feet. You should be able to do it. That's the truth. And so is that the rule now in soccer? I don't know what the rule is now in soccer. I didn't play soccer until I was like 14. I played high school soccer. I didn't know how to head the ball. I played. I probably got a few dings. I remember a couple times where the ball hits you in the head and you're like, damn, that doesn't feel right. But that's my personal belief. All right, additional questions from you guys. Additional questions, again, talked about LeBron versus Kyrie versus Stephen A. and also the CTE. Yes, I scored 1 goal in my soccer career. I scored from midfield. The goalie was out of the box. I got a pass. A ball came to me going fairly good speed. I caught it at midfield. I scored from midfield. Only goal I scored in my life. I don't know when the NFL hit will happen. I think it'll be gradual. I think every year there'll be fewer people playing in the NFL. And I'm not even sure that the long-range impact of the NFL will be felt for a long time. But if I had an NFL team right now, I would sell it. Personally. I think the NFL has peaked. I think the NFL has reached its absolute apex. I think that in the years ahead, I always like to use this example. People always assume that nothing changes. One of the reasons why you can make a lot of money in the world is because most people assume that what is will always be. They don't think about the future. They don't think about things changing down the road. Let me give you an example. If I were doing this show in 1950s and I had the technology to do it, I would have come on and I would have said the 3 biggest sports in America today are horse racing, they are baseball, and it's boxing. And anybody out there who says otherwise is an idiot. 50 years later, only one of those sports, baseball, is still one of the top 3 most popular. And people can say, oh, right now the NFL is huge. You're crazy. There's no way the NFL ever won't be number 1. Well, there was a time when the NFL wasn't number 1. Everything changes, all right? Everything changes every day in life. And especially nowadays, things change in a hurry. So people out there who say, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to change forever, things will change. 100%. Things will be different when we are 70 than they are now. 35 years from now, the things are going to look entirely differently. We'll have had almost 2 generations. 40 years from now, we'll have had almost 2 generations. 2 full generations. 3 in the South, as I like to say. Just think about it. Most people believe nothing is ever going to change. You want to make a lot of money in life, work under the assumption that things are going to change. Because most people assume that things are always going to stay the same. I love you guys. Go download the show. My name is Clay Travis, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. Sirius XM channel 83, 250 AM FM stations nationwide. This has been Outkick the Show. Go download the SeatGeek app, put in the go to the settings tab, click add a promo code, put in the promo code Outkick and save money as you get ready for the start of football season. I love all of you guys. Believe Stephen A. Don't believe LeBron. Kyrie Irving, not the bad guy, even though LeBron James wants you to believe that he is. Kisses, D-Bap. I'll see you guys. Thank you, guys.